So I just got back from Samsung's hands-on S24 briefing in London, and there's a lot to unpack. Basically, there are 3 improvements this year, and those are in terms of the design, in terms of the display, and in terms of AI, which is something that Samsung has been focusing especially heavily on this year. And I want to start off with the design. All S24 models get the flat frame treatment this year. The S24 and S24 Plus have a full flat frame that curves ever so slightly around the back. I do like this move, and I have found them to be incredibly grippy when I was holding them in my hands, but when I had them next to my iPhone 15 Pro Max, the frame was almost identical to the iPhone's. So I'm a bit sad to see that Samsung is losing a bit of their identity here and making their frame look almost the same as the iPhone's, but hey, I guess there's only so many ways that you can design a frame in. The S24 Ultra's frame is a bit different. You see, not only is it now made out of titanium, which is both more durable, and it's also got this really nice cold and matte feel, which I absolutely loved, but this frame also has a different shape compared to the standard models. It's still flat on the top and the bottom, but it does curve around the sides. I'm assuming that Samsung did this in order to make it a bit more comfortable to hold, as having such a wide phone with a fully flat frame just isn't very nice to use. The iPhone 14 Pro Max was a very good example of this. And I gotta say, in my hands-on time with the S24 Ultra, it did actually feel more comfortable than even my iPhone 15 Pro Max. But compared to the other S24 models, the Ultra did feel a bit disconnected. Not only because of its different frame design, but also because of its shape, which once again is more rectangular as opposed to the more rounded off shape of the S24 and the S24 Plus. So I do wish that Samsung unified their design language to have a more consistent look across the entire lineup. Speaking of flat frames, you know what else is flat? The display, which is the second big change with the S24 lineup. Personally, I've always been a fan of curved displays, and I've been saying this for years. I just love how they look. They make the phone look more futuristic, but at the same time, I do get why Samsung made this change. Flat displays are easier and cheaper to manufacture, and in the case of the Ultra, which does have an S Pen, it improves the experience of using it, as it won't slide off the phone or the edges of the phone like it currently does on the S23 Ultra. And as a plus, the bezels are also thinner now. The standard and Plus models now get slightly bigger displays, which also support a dynamic 1Hz to 120Hz refresh rate range that used to be only on the Ultra models. And the S24 Ultra also gets some serious brightness improvements here. The peak brightness when watching HDR content is now 2600 nits from 1750 on the S23 Ultra. And this was definitely visible when I was watching some HDR content at the briefing. The S24 Ultra was noticeably brighter and the colors popped way more. And what's even more impressive is that the highest outdoor brightness level, I was told, is now 1500 nits, up from 1200. Now, I know this isn't quite iPhone 15 Pro level, which can go up to 2000 nits, but at least it will now be closer. And you also need to remember that the iPhone can only sustain that brightness for around 4 or so minutes, after which it dims quite significantly, whereas the S23 Ultra was very consistent. So if the S24 Ultra can sustain its brightness at 1500 nits outdoors for long periods of time, then that would be very impressive. Of course, do stay tuned for the full review, which is when we'll be testing all of this. And one last thing in terms of the display here is that Samsung is now using a brand new front glass that Corning has made exclusively for the S24 Ultra. And it's called the Corning Gorilla Armor. Samsung claims that it reduces reflections by 75% and that it is 4 times more resistant to scratches and impact. Now, of course, I wasn't able to drop the phones while I was at the event to test durability, but I can say for sure that the reflections were significantly reduced from the S23 Ultra, to the point where, when looked at an angle, the blacks looked deeper on the S24 Ultra and the colors and the brightness were also much improved. Oh, and on a bit of a separate note, you may or may not have noticed the stunning wallpapers that our iMac has been displaying. They're part of our brand new wallpapers pack called Sublime Sunsets by our designer Splashy, and this is generally one of my favorite packs yet in wallpapers. It's got these stunning views of different sunsets from all around the world. I absolutely love this one with the dolphins. Like, just take a look at how good this looks. I also love this blue and red one that we have in the iMac, as well as this gorgeous black and red mountain one. They're all amazing. And of course, they're also all in 8K. So you can use them on your desktop, tablet, phone, basically on anything. And to celebrate the launch of the Galaxy S24, we're giving away 5 Android codes for full wallpapers access right here. Okay, and now back to the video. And the third big new thing this year is AI. Probably 80% of my briefing presentation was about AI. In fact, there was so much AI content in the briefing that Samsung didn't even get a chance to talk about the battery or the charging, or even mention things such as more RAM and the storage details, which I later found out while I was at the hands-on event. So AI is everywhere in the S24 lineup, hence why Samsung is calling this Galaxy AI. And by everywhere, I mean that pretty much every first-party app has now been updated to include some sort of generative AI capability. For example, in the Gallery app, if you rotate an image, the AI can fill in the corners. You can also select the subject and place it somewhere else in the image. In the phone app, you can now use AI to not just translate what the other person is saying in real time, but you can also speak in your own language, and that would be translated in that caller's native language in real time. You can also use AI in first and third-party messaging apps to translate a conversation in real time for both the messages that you receive and the messages that you send. Then let's say you're in a meeting, you can leave the voice recording app just going, and then at the end of that meeting, it will not only transcribe everything that was said in the meeting into text, but it will also summarize that into bullet points, which you can then email to your team. You can also circle an object in any image that's being displayed on your screen, no matter what app you're using, and then instantly get a description of it. There are just loads of AI features here. And I'm especially excited about some of these, like the AI translated messages and phone calls. Whereas in terms of the rest, a lot of them are things that Google already has on the Pixel 8, like moving a subject in a photo, and most of these are actually features that I have myself seen demoed at the Snapdragon Summit back in October. This made me think that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is required for all of these AI features. So I did ask the Samsung representatives if the Exynos versions of the standard S24 and S24 Plus lack these AI features or have any downgrades in terms of them. And I was told that no, all the AI features work the same way, as they are a combination of on-device and on-the-cloud processing. And to be honest, I wouldn't even be surprised if Samsung is using a Snapdragon-powered cloud in order to make these AI features work on the Exynos versions too. Okay, so these are the 3 big changes: the design, the display, and AI. But what about the camera and everything else? Well, the camera is definitely a smaller upgrade this year, as every single module except for the periscope is unchanged. The periscope, which used to be a 10x, is now a 5x, just like the leaks predicted. However, this 5x module does have a much higher resolution. At 50 megapixels as opposed to 10, it's also got 60% larger pixels on that sensor, and also a larger f3.4 aperture as opposed to f4.9. So essentially what this all means is that this new module is noticeably better in low light. Samsung claims a 100% better capture in terms of the light, and you'll also be able to take portrait photos with it, as well as record 8K video, and the 10x zoom results should be similar to the S23 Ultras despite the lower optical level of zoom, thanks to the high resolution and the improvements when it comes to AI processing. So I did get a chance to take some samples here. If you take a look at the first one, which was taken at 10x, the S24 Ultra is a tiny bit better. The text is easier to read, and the texture on the wall is quite a bit more defined. If we take a look at the second photo here, also at 10x, the S24 Ultra is actually significantly better, with almost no noise at all, yet a brighter and sharper image too. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this. However, if we move on to 30x, the S23 Ultra is a bit better here. The S24 this time has more noise, and the colors are more washed out. But then in this second 30x shot, the S24 Ultra is the one that's sharper, yet the image processing is better on the S23 Ultra. So at 10x, I'd say the images are better. At 30x, it's a bit of a hit and miss. We'll definitely do an in-depth comparison, so do stay tuned for that. Oh, and if you're thinking about pre-ordering a Galaxy S24, no matter which model that is, feel free to use the link below for some exclusive discounts and offers. But again, the bigger changes are indeed the design, the display, and the AI features rather than the camera. But do stay tuned for all of the videos that we'll be doing. We have a lot of them that we have planned. including comparisons, camera tests, and way more. I'm Daniel, this means ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.